vlog newsletters. Anybody but him, get a little this, little of that. Now we're getting to some favorites. My book club, TBR jar system. Okay, January. It is time to do a wrap up. And I don't really do these very often, so bear with me as we figure out how to go about these. I will try and do a menu here. First, we're going to be talking about all of the big channel book related things that I did. Then we're gonna go over my game points, and then we're gonna end with my actual books that I read and my reviews and thoughts on them. So if you want to skip around, feel free to do that. Starting with just general updates and big things that have been going on. I have been continuing with the weekly reading vlogs or weekly vlogs. They're supposed to be everything, but I mostly read, so they've basically been reading vlogs. I've been sick, so I haven't done as many as I would like, but we are still doing them, so that's a thing. I also started doing regular bonus videos for my patrons. Basically, I do these vlog newsletters, behind the scenes updates where I just talk about things that are going on, things that I'm struggling with in a more vlog style. So like walk around, show different things, talk about different things. Sometimes I get more vloggy than other times, but that's just a thing that we're doing. I also ended up working on both of my book clubs. So the POC book club, which is open to all of you guys, along with the Bessies book club, which is exclusive to my patrons. And I set up Fable accounts for both of them. To get to the Bessies, you do have to go through Patreon, but the POC book club I have linked down below. I also have links to other things in the description if you're interested, so always check that out. And I guess the last big thing before we get into points is that I have been focusing more on trying to get my Instagram game up. Posting more, just being more active over there, all of that. I am considering TikTok, but we're not there yet. We are not. I don't know how to. It's not happening yet, but it might be coming in a future wrap up, so stay tuned. That's pretty much it for general big booktube updates, wrap ups, and things like that. Let's get into the game points for my TBR game and all of the stuff that I read and the new plans for that moving forward, because my points are going to be how I buy books after February, since I do have a couple of book hauls that I've already purchased, so don't at me. Alright, getting into that, I'm going to be using these points to figure out how many books I'm allowed to buy. Now, February's a wash because I had 2 big book hauls planned for Black History Month. So I did that. This game doesn't affect it. It's everything basically after that. So let's dive in. I do have my planner here, which I'm going to look at for all of my like book notes. So if I'm looking down, that's why. Starting off, I had 2 bonus points that I was not able to do. A book with 500 plus pages or a classic. So I lose these points. Very sad, but that's how my game works and I'm okay with it. So this will go back in rotation for the next game. I had 3 books from January. I didn't even get to. They still have their prompt card points. So if I read them in future months, I will get the points still. I'm nice to myself. If you were playing and you wanted to be mean to yourself, you can. The rules are flexible. But my game is supposed to encourage you to read. And so just because I didn't get to these this month, it doesn't mean I can't get to them, you know, in the future. I will not be trying to read them in February though, because I read exclusively Black authors in February. So these I'm gonna hold on to. Okay, so for my reading, I ended up having 2 board points from playing the game and the beginning of February. I ended up reading 12,220 pages, which gave me an additional 12 points. From reading all of the books and completing most of the bonus card points, I ended up getting 25 points. I have motivation points, which this year is for reading classics or poetries, any nonfictions, or reading arcs and new releases. I used to do continuations of series. I had 8 books that were continuations of series, so I would have gotten 8 points, but I think I'm going to cross that out because I currently don't have an issue continuing. The arcs and new releases this month was really high though, because I read 10 books that fit in that category, and then I read 0 nonfictions and 0 classics or poetry, so I got a total of 10 motivation points. I am now, for my milestones, just going to do 5 points for every 25 books that I read, and then an additional 10 every 100 that I hit. So I'll get 10 for hitting 100 plus 5 for that 25. So that'd be 15 points there. 15 points at 200, 15, so on and so forth. So those are the milestones. I did read more than 25 books, but not up to 50. So I only got 5 milestone points. And since I read 34 books, I got 34 points for that, which is a total of 88 points. So what am I going to do with 88 points? Well, I'm thinking for every 5 points, I get 1 book token. So that means I will get 17 book tokens that I can use to buy books with. Now we should get into talking about the books and my thoughts on them. We're not going to go in depth with every single one of them because I have gone over several of these in videos, but I will give you an idea of how I feel about all of them. I did start Every Summer After by Carly Fortune, and I got like halfway through before I was all like, not going to make it by February. And so I stopped reading this, and I will pick it up in the future, maybe, probably. I'm not loving it, if I'm being honest with you, but I don't hate it. It's fine so far. And then I have another Island Witch, which I started, am absolutely loving, but there was no way I was going to finish it before February. So it's a soft DNF that I will most definitely continue at the beginning of March. Like, I'm sad I couldn't finish it in time because I'm taking so many notes. It's a fun time. So you will hear that hopefully not in the next wrap up, but the wrap up after that. Fingers crossed. We're not doing these in order. Hello, future me here, coming in to group some stuff together to make it easier. I think we're gonna do this moving forward. Again, this is my first time doing a wrap up like this, so bear with me. That being said, here are all of the books that I ended up talking about in my Winterween video, which you can catch up here. I will obviously go deeper into them in that video, but to make sure that this video isn't ages long, I will just quickly talk about them. So first book is Shadow Covens. This is the second in a series. I ended up enjoying it for the most part. It's like a high 3 stars. The issue that I have with this and book 1 is that we get too many perspectives. Too much is going on and it's really hard to really get attached and connected to the characters and the story. This takes place at a witchy school with a bunch of witch friends along with their non-witch friends from a other school, trying to solve big problems in different ways in each of the books. Again, I liked it, but it's not my favorite because it's hard to get connected to the characters. Next up, we have A Dreadful Splendor. This is a mystery book that focuses on a con artist character who basically pretends to speak to the dead so that she can get money out of different people, and she ends up getting forced to do a seance for a man whose wife has died, but he insists she was murdered. And it's in an attempt to try and ease his struggles, but things don't go quite as planned. I actually really enjoyed this. This was a fun time, and it does do some silly, weird, wacky things, but like I really liked the character and was just really invested. White Horse is about a Native American character who ends up seeing a ghost and is trying to figure out what is going on while dealing with several things in her personal life with her and her sister, who is in not the best of relationships and trying to come to terms with her own expectations and accepting her sister's wants and needs and things like that. I liked the ghost aspect. I don't think it was pushed as much as I would have liked. There was a little bit of a mystery, but it was a lot of just her just doing her general day-to-day, so it was kind of boring, which was a little disappointing. The Night House is a horror book that focuses on a young boy who moves to a new town and is kind of a bully, and he ends up being with a kid when the kid gets sucked into a telephone booth and nobody believes him, and then he's trying to figure out what happens. There are some pretty interesting twists and turns that happened with this. It was perfectly fine. I didn't love it. I have heard that Joe Nesbo tend to write women in a very sexist way. I didn't experience that in this book, but it's something to keep in mind, I guess, if I read any books from him in the future. I don't know if I will though. It did some cool things, but I still feel kind of meh about the whole thing. So I'm not sure 100% how I feel about it. It's definitely not a favorite or anything. It's more mid-range, if anything else. And the last one for the Winterween vlog is the writing retreat. And you would have seen there were some ups and downs with my feelings towards this, which I talk about in the vlog. I have a story that focuses on a woman who is a writer, and she gets invited to this very exclusive writing retreat with 4 other writers. And while there, things kind of get weird. It takes some twists and turns. It gets a little wacky. This is one of those books that people either love or hate. I actually ended up being more in the middle. Again, there were some ups and downs with it. I was really, really invested in the beginning. Then it did a turn that I thought was kind of cheesy, but then it was kind of fun regardless, so I still ended up enjoying it. It's fine. Again, that's it for the Winterween vlog. The next group of books will be for final January weekly vlog. I was kind of behind on posting my weekly vlogs, so the vlog is actually more of a January vlog than just a weekly vlog, because I read a lot of books. So all of these books are covered in that vlog, and we will go through them pretty quickly, starting with the 2 books that I don't physically have. So I ended up reading Holus Bolus, which was a short horror novella, I believe, where we have a character who wakes up next to a dead body, doesn't remember anything about himself or his past, and just notices a tattoo on his body that says sleep equals forgets. And before turning himself in, he hears a voice that tells him that he didn't do it and he should investigate it instead. And it takes him on this journey. It was weird, not totally my type of writing, but I actually ended up really liking it in the end because it did have some interesting conversations about right versus wrong and the grays in between, along with classism and the entertainment industry and consumerism, just all kinds of different things, which I thought was a pleasant surprise. And then the other book that I don't have a physical copy of yet is Switched, and this is a Freaky Friday romance, basically, which I wasn't expecting, where we have 2 characters who aren't on the best of terms after having a one-night stand, and they end up having to work together, and one night things go awry and they wake up in each other's body. It was so adorable. It was so fun. It was so silly. I really enjoyed it. I didn't know that I would want a Freaky Friday romance, but I totally was here for it. Would recommend, and I ended up pre-ordering the physical copy because I knew that I would want it. Next up, we have Tell Me How You Really Feel, and this is a YA sapphic romance that was a little bit silly, over the top with our characters. We have sort of a rivals to lovers situation that is based off of a misunderstanding. They end up being forced to work together and discover that maybe things weren't as bad as they thought. Again, it was cute. Then I finally got around to reading Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I don't know much to say about this. It is a romance that takes place in Mexico as a war is starting off with the white cowboys attacking the natives, and at the same time there are these monsters that are going around, and our main 2 characters had a experience with something like that many years beforehand, which ended up splitting them apart, leaving one of our characters thinking that the other was dead, only to find out that that may not have been the case. I didn't love this because I didn't really enjoy the relationship, and that was the main point. And I did actually like the idea of the vampires, but it was such a small part of it that it was kind of disappointing. So yeah, didn't hate it. It was fine, but I wanted so much more for this. So another mid book. You Lucky Dog is a rom-com romance between 2 characters who both have basset hounds. And after their dog walker ends up in a bit of a pickle, their dogs get swapped. And it takes some time for them to figure out exactly what happened, get their right dogs, and realize that their dogs like each other and maybe they like each other as well. This was cute. This was fun. I wasn't expecting to like it because it's been on my graveyard list for a while. I was gonna try and get rid of it, but fortunately I didn't, because yeah, it was cute. It was a fun time. Next we have The Drowning Kind, which is more of a thriller mystery. I don't know. I struggle with horror, thriller, mystery categories. This one is a story about a family that owns this like enchanted springs sort of situation. And there's two sisters who have been separated for quite some time until one day one of them dies in the springs and the other one comes to try and sort out what's going on, and in it discovers there may be more to what happened, and so she starts investigating. We hear multiple POVs, multiple things going on. It was enjoyable. This was another one that I didn't have the physical copy until after I read it because I did enjoy it. Now we're getting to some favorites, starting with Most Ardently. This is a Pride and Prejudice retelling featuring a trans man, Oliver, as the main character who falls for Darcy, a gay man. And it is so friggin' adorable. It's so nice. And one of my favorite things is that the narrative never misgenders Oliver, even when he is outwardly presenting as Elizabeth Bennet. It was so sweet. It was so cute. I ended up loving this. I read this and then I started rereading it, and I would still be doing that if it wasn't February. So hopefully I will continue that because I'm trying to annotate the whole book since it was just feel good vibes. Highly recommend. Another favorite would be Two Twisted Crowns. This is the second book in the Shepherd King duology by Rachel Gillig. This is a fantasy romance series. Both books focuses on different relationships, which I wasn't expecting, and there's a lot of fun magic elements to it. We have these Providence cards, we have this magical sickness. People with the magical sicknesses are usually killed for their own good, and we have just peril in the kingdom and just all kinds of stuff that is going on in these books. I highly recommend them. I really like them. I did annotate this as well. It was very slow going because I was just savoring it, and this will probably be one of those books where I annotate a copy to sell for people who are interested. So let me know if that's something that you would like, because yeah, I loved it. It was such a fun time. This one we actually talked about earlier on because I did not finish this, but I did talk about it in this vlog, along with No One Can Know by Kate Alice Marshall. This is a thriller mystery with three sisters who all inherited this house after their parents were murdered, but everybody assumed that our main character was the killer. After some unexpected things happen in her life and she is forced to move back into this house with her husband, she decides that she wants to figure out what actually happened. This was a fun time. I was in it the whole time. I had a ton of fun griping about the husband. He got on my everlasting nerves, and I do think there were several silly things that were happening, some concepts that was all like, that doesn't fully make sense, but I still enjoyed it. Next we have Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. This is the first in this duology about a young girl who takes her brother's place for a tournament to become the master tailor of the emperor so that she could bring honor to her family. I assumed that this was mostly going to be about that trial, and that's only 1/3 of the book. Then it goes on to different adventures and different things happening. I loved it. I'm a big fan of Elizabeth Lim's writing in general. I like the romances that she does. I like the characters. I don't mind that they're YA. I just, in general, have a good time, and this was no exception. I'm excited to continue this series. And the last book we're going to talk about for this vlog is Killers of a Certain Age, which is about assassins who, when they are retiring, it seems that somebody puts a hit on them, so they end up forced on the run trying to figure out what's going on and why this is happening. It's fast-paced, it's funny, it's lighthearted, and in general, it's just a good time. I really enjoyed it. Pretty early on, I also read Scandal in Spring, which is a continuation of the Wallflower series by Lisa Kleypas, and this is a historical romance. I think this is like book 4, and I think the book I read beforehand was like book 3, but I haven't read 1 or 2. It was recommended by one of you guys. Again, thank you, Swan, for the recommendation, because I really liked the first book, and then I enjoyed this one as well. It was a fun time. I don't know what I rated this though. 3 or 4, like high 3 or a 4-star. It was fun. It was really cute. I liked the premise. It's a woman whose father wants her to get married, but she's like, I don't want to. And he goes, you have to pick someone or else you're going to have to marry, insert this you know, one dude that she's like, anybody but him. And then he comes along and she's like, why am I attracted to him? Like, I'm supposed to hate him. I want to marry anybody but him. And then they're cute. So that was fun. Flying Solo. This is a general fiction romance about a woman whose great aunt passes away, has no kids. So she's all like, well, like, someone's got to deal with her stuff and stuff like that. And I really liked her. So she goes in and she's handling all of her belongings and her things. And then someone may have dubious things in mind and she has to figure out what's going on and find stuff and things like that. And all at the same time, she's interacting with an old fling from her high school and wondering, you know, what's happening. It felt a little bit more general fiction than romance, even though that was a part of it. It was interesting. I did enjoy it. I didn't love it, but I did enjoy it, and I would continue with the series because I think this is a series. I don't know who would be the second. A friend, a cousin? I don't remember. There was somebody else who was helping her, but I forgot, obviously. Queen Among the Dead. I think this is the Bookish Box special edition. Knew nothing about it, but I just needed something that had 4 words in the title for one of my prompts. I went with this because I'm trying to read down some of my subscription box books because I just get them, you know? So I'm trying to see if they're any good. It says specifically it's a retelling inspired by the legend of the first true queen of ancient Ireland. And it's a standalone, which is fantastic. You know, how do I describe it? It talks about our princess who is trying to figure out what is best for the kingdom, even though she's kind of the shunned one. She's not supposed to be a queen or anything like that. Wants to be a warrior. And stuff is happening, things are happening, stuff happens. I don't know how to describe it. Oh, she also has magical powers that she doesn't understand and she's not supposed to because magic is shunned in her kingdom by her father. Fun times, fun times. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, but ended up enjoying it in the end, especially considering it was a standalone. Like when I finished it, I was like, oh, satisfied. I do recommend even if it's not a favorite. Next up is Camp Zero by Michelle Min Sterling. But this was a TBR jar pick. This one was interesting. It's supposed to be kind of futuristic, global warming. People are moving up north so that they can try and survive. Horrible things are happening elsewhere. We have people have like chips in their head, but in the area that we're at, it doesn't matter. It's not even significant to the story. Like, it didn't feel like it was a futuristic book, even though technically it was supposed to be. I really like the White Rabbit aspect of it, which was a group of women scientists who were brought to this location to basically do an experiment and try and, you know, check out different stuff in this area to see if they can like survive for a certain amount of time. And things go wrong, and basically they become this kind of myth, this legend, this whole experience. And then you hear more about that along with what's happening now and whatever. And you have these women who are escorts, but they're also spies, sort of like they're trying to keep wraps on the men at this camp that's trying to make, I don't know how much of this makes sense. A lot was going on, and that was my biggest problem with it. I don't think everything was crafted very well. I felt like there was too many stories going on. I didn't care about everything that was happening. But in the end, like when I think back on it, I like it more than I did when I was reading it. Like, I think it had some interesting concepts and some cool things that was going on, but I didn't love the experience of reading it and do still kind of feel meh about it overall, which is disappointing because I was really excited about it. Okay, I'm gonna talk about 5 books in one because I ended up reading Lore Olympus volume 1s through 5, which are all of the ones that I have access to, unfortunately. I will say trigger warnings if you try and read this. This is a graphic novel based off of the Hades and Persephone lore, and there are some changes that are done to the actual mythology to fit with the story. So I do know some people are pretty bothered by that. I feel like it made the story stronger and I really enjoyed it, but I do know that that can bother people. But I loved it. I ate it up. Basically one sitting. Technically it was 2, but that was just because I started it really late. I spent a couple of hours at night reading the first 3, and the first thing in the morning I finished the books that I have and pre-ordered the next one in the series, which is funny because if you don't know, Hades and Persephone has a huge age gap, which is something that I hate, but I didn't didn't mind it in this circumstance. Probably because mythology, they're all gods and goddesses. I don't know. Then I read No Gods, No Monsters. This one has been on that NetGalley thing for ages, and I would have DNF'd it had I not been trying to complete these so that I can raise up my percentage, which I'm at like 90% right now, but I'm trying to get to 100 if I'm being honest with you. Unfortunately, I hated it, which is funny because the concept is interesting. We have a futuristic world where there are the same issues that we have in this world, but in addition to Black people having to worry about being targeted and or, you know, Black brutality and all of that stuff, out of nowhere, monsters show up, right? So there's this just addition to like, is it this, is it that? And there's all of these commentary. I don't know what the point is that it was really trying to make. I struggled to pay attention to this. I didn't like the writing style. We were very focused on like individual moments in a way that wasn't particularly interesting. I didn't care about any of the people. We got snippets that could have been interesting, but they never took it there. And it wasn't until like the 80% mark where things started ramping up and I started getting interested. But since I didn't enjoy anything before then, I still wasn't invested in what was going on. And so I was just like, it would have been great if we like maybe started off with this and then gave us information. I don't know, like I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I feel really bad that I didn't like it. It just didn't hit it for me. Then we have Infinity Alchemist. This was one that I didn't think that I was going to get. This is a book that I think I'm supposed to be getting in the future for a subscription box that I'm super excited about, like super excited about. And I ended up really enjoying it. It is about a world where alchemy is sort of outlawed unless you have a license. And it's really hard to get a license unless you have, you know, status. And so our main character wants to get a license and applies to the local university for alchemy and gets denied. And so he's like, I'm gonna go and be staff at this university so that I can like, you know, get a little this, little of that, and then try and convince him to let me in so I can get the license. But he's still practicing alchemy in secret, which is a no-no. It's against the law. And one day someone he thinks is a professor comes in, finds him, and he's like, uh-oh. And so he kind of gets roped into something and the book kind of goes from there. This book has an actual love triangle. You know, people are always saying, oh, like, oh, it's not actually a love triangle. It's more of like a non-connected. It's connected. I loved it. It was great. I liked it. I liked the characters. I liked the general story. I liked the characters more than anything. The story was interesting, but the characters, it was fun experiencing them, having them interact, seeing them grow and build their friendships and stuff like that. Apparently it's the first in a series. It had a very satisfying ending. So I'm interested to see where the next book takes us, because I'm gonna continue the series 100%. And then another book that I was very excited to get because I had already pre-ordered it before requesting is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson, the same person who wrote A Dowry in Blood, which I really enjoyed. And this one is supposed to be its companion, even though they are very different. I mean, like, they're not, you don't have to read one to read the other. They are separate, but I get why they say it's a companion piece. And this is about a girl who goes to a school and gets into a class with a teacher that is hard to get into, and it's like a poetry class, basically. And her and another student ends up kind of competing for the attention of said teacher. They end up getting pulled into this like exclusive group and brought into a whole different world. It's a vampire book. Things happen. It's very sapphic. It's steamy. It's fun. I loved it. Very much had a good time. Thumbs up. Okay, then a random one. This is another book that I've attempted to unhaul several times, but every time I do try, I would like read it and be like, that sounds interesting. And I'm so glad I didn't get rid of it because I was right. This ended up being a lot of fun. This is a sci-fi book of a world very similar to ours, but randomly one day a bunch of these spheres just popped up everywhere around the world, and each color does different things. And if you find two of a sphere, you can like put them next to your head and and basically suck in their enhancing abilities. And so some of them are more rare than others, and you basically have this new, I don't know, currency in this world that people hunt so that they can sell and or, you know, buy so that they can experience these enhancements. And we have one character who's pretty poor, who tries to sell these things, meets up with another one who does hunting. He ends up interested in her, decides to go hunting with her. Things happen, stuff happens. They end up getting pulled into this whole big thing. It was fun. I thought it was interesting. I didn't love exactly the direction that it went, but I also didn't hate it. And so yeah, I had a surprising good time. I feel like it's slept on. I feel like more people should read this one because I don't think I've heard anybody ever talk about that. Okay, the first book I read of the year. Yeah, this is so out of order. Maybe next time I'll order things. The first book I read of the year was The Shadows, which I read because I had read The Whisper Man and I thought they were related, and they may be, but not in a super obvious way. Like, I think some of the characters from this ended up in the other one, but they're very different stories. They're not connected. I don't know if you have to read them back to back. This had this whole dreamscape thing that I thought was vaguely interesting. It's more true crime mystery kind of deal than anything else, even though, like, I don't know how to describe it. It was fine. It was fine. There's like hints of these like supernatural things, and I just wanted them to take it more. I wanted there to be more of that stuff, and that was true for the other book. Both of them were fine. All right, and next up, I totally forgot about these. These are actually going out in the first official vlog of February, which will be going up shortly after this video. So if you want to hear more about all of these books, stay tuned for that. I will try to remember to add a link up here once that comes out. Otherwise, you can just check the channel. The first book would be The Checklist by Addie Woolridge. I thought that this was a romance because there is a situation with a character who has a stressful job and is put on an assignment that takes place in her hometown, which she hasn't been in a while because she has some issues with her family being a little bit more wild than she is. And so she reluctantly takes on this job, even though it is kind of a doomed scenario, working as a PR type person for a company that just keeps not listening and doing really awful things, which is putting it at risk of going under. And so she's forced to kind of deal with that and all the struggles that come with it, while also being put back into the vicinity of her very attractive neighbor. And there are some romance moments, but it's really more focused on the struggles that she's facing within her current relationship, the awful job that she has, and all of the issues that she has with her family. I didn't love it because I was expecting it to be romance, but I didn't hate it because what it did was relatively good. And the more I think about it, the more I like this book. In the video, I was very disappointed, but after thinking about it, I don't know. It's not as bad as I was feeling, but it was very anxiety inducing, which was not fun. So, first one. Next up, we have While We Were Dating by Jasmine Guillory. This one is a romance, and I typically have hit or misses when it comes to Jasmine Guillory, and fortunately, this was a hit. Really enjoyed it. This one focuses on a actress who is working with an ad agency, and she ends up having some one-on-one time with the head of the campaign, and a friendship builds, spark flies, things happen. It was a good time. It mostly focused on their interactions. Next up, we have The AI Who Loved Me by Alyssa Cole. I got this in a blind date with the book box, and I'm not gonna lie, I like Alyssa Cole's writing, but I felt kind of meh about this book. I haven't been excited to pick it up, but the audio book that I had on Amazon Prime was expiring. And so I was like, it's now or never that I'm gonna listen to the audiobook, might as well. And I liked it. This is another fun romance, but that surprisingly had a deeper, more interesting backstory that we uncover throughout, right? So it focuses more on the characters than anything. We have one character who is living in this apartment complex who has had some sort of accident and who is, you know, trying to get by, and she likes doing things on her own. And it's a very futuristic settings. We've got like robot washing machines and dishwashers and things like that. And we're getting bits and pieces of whatever it is that happened to her as she's kind of experiencing her day to day. And then eventually she comes across one of her neighbor's nephews, and he seems a little bit odd, but her neighbor says that he had also just experienced an accident and there was some sort of brain injury. So all of the weird robotic things that he does, she just put it off as like, oh, that must be his brain injury. I will say at first I was really annoyed because I was all like, he's so obviously a robot. Like the fact that you don't even think it is stupid. But as time went on, it got cuter. I enjoyed it a lot. Like I really enjoyed their interactions. I loved his perspective. It is dual perspective. And there's just something so fun about hearing him as he starts to develop and uncover and become more human. Oh, I loved it. I loved it so much because for some reason he is very interested in her and he's not exactly sure why. And so they end up spending more and more time together. And as we're experiencing them bonding, learning, so and so, we're also uncovering more things to the story. And it was great. I ate it up. It was so good. Loved it. I freaking loved this. This was a good time. And then finally, I ended up reading this, and I don't know how to talk about this if I'm being honest with you. I kind of hated it. This is a story about 3 different women who all end up in Sweden and have different connections and whatever and completely different experiences, and it's focusing on the Black experience, and I did find some of that absolutely fascinating, but it was just these pointless almost moments of these women's lives, and all I felt was just very frustrated, angry, and I didn't understand the point. And I feel like so much more could have been done with these stories as they are. If there was, I don't know, a stronger through line, if there was some sort of shift, like there are so many things that could have been done to make this so much better. Even with the endings, which I hated under the circumstances, they could have been good in a different story, but everything together felt very bland. I wanted to like this. So I guess take that with a grain of salt because I am not a general fiction person. And if you were down with just the meandering situation and just being in somebody's life with no point and experiencing the shitty things that they experience, give it a shot. Didn't want this to be so negative. But yeah, those are most of the books that I ended up reading for the next vlog. And before we go, I have created an updated TBR jar system, which will be featured in the February TBR game, so stay tuned for that. And I will probably incorporate this into future wrap-ups. I have some ideas. We'll see how it goes next month. So get excited. Stay tuned. Thanks so much for hanging out with me in this wrap-up. If you have any suggestions for future ones, do let me know. Otherwise, I will catch you in the next video. Thanks for being awesome. Until next time. Bye! I'm gonna have to do some interesting editing to this video because this is all new to me and I don't think I did it in the best order.